All right. And then I'll maximize this. I'll give it a minute for you guys to get set up. So I was going to, how many of you are signed up for the summer classes? Or you are? Mine? Okay. If you aren't and if you want to, I mean, they're actually getting to a decent enrollment. They're like 12, 14, which is enough that they'll go. They would go anyway, I think, because they're required. And they're never offered at any other time.
Is that just like a way to like boost summer enrollment?
No, we used to do it twice a year. We just don't have enough students. There was a time for a while. We actually are still better enrolled than most of the school IT programs. But there was a time a few years back when the economy was really bad. We do best when the economy is bad.
So you're like the Walmart of academia.
Yeah.
You're like poverty profit.
Well, so it's when people are looking for work, they'll go back to school to retrain, right? So when employment is bad, we're full. When employment is fairly good, we're not. But there was a time when we had like 300 students. I mean, it was just flooded. We couldn't handle the capacity. We still have quite a few students. We're still in close to 200, which is really good. But anyway, the point was at that point we could offer multiple sections. But now, I mean, it's hard enough to fill one section once a year for these, because this is only required by the database. Other people can take it because they want the database skills, but only the database certificate requires those 2 classes. Anyway, I think they're fun classes. We spend all day together, so that's a. And as I said, if it scares you off that there's no lunch, I make sure there's a lunch.
Maybe.
Yeah, this day's already going by.
Community assessment, right? Community assessment.
Yeah, we'll use community assist for the example. So I'll just do that real quickly.
I was just saying, I sat down to do math homework at 9, and then I looked up, it's 10:07.
Oh, yeah, I've been thinking of doing some math, actually.
It's overrated.
Well, the thing, we were talking about adding a certificate in data, kind of related to the database, which would be in data analysis. And the thing is, I need to brush up on my statistics, I think.
Pure mathematics sounds overrated.
I don't know. It's just another language. It has its benefits. Almost all the technology that we have is the result of
That's
mathematics.
applied mathematics. Yeah, that's not like doing math just for the sake of doing
Yeah, but even that eventually has applications usually. It's kind of like physics. Even though you're exploring obscure particles, without quantum mechanics, there'd be no
obviously,
television.
for the first few years. And it's, I think, apparently 500 was once on like whatever California board approved textbooks for schools was noted for like objecting to teaching students like math that wasn't actually applied in a meaningful way.
Well, physicists tend to like applied math because that's what they're doing, is they're applying math.
Yeah.
Mathematicians consider them to be whatever, but they don't have much respect for physicists' mathematical ability.
Often don't respect mathematicians.
Yes. But I think there's room for both. If I had the mind for it, I think I would like pure mathematics. Be like the Glass Speed game. You ever read that by Herman Hesse? It's a good book if you ever. Herman Hesse, he won the Nobel Prize in the 50s. I don't know. German. All right, so we're going to do stored procedures. Are we almost ready? I've been kind of delaying as long as I can. Oh, you're
More
good.
updates, yes, oh, wait, every day for her.
How far?
And I can actually give you one.
This will take a while. It
Yeah.
doesn't even say.
It doesn't even give you an estimate.
For what it's worth, I've taken you to do it.
This computer was shut down when I got here and I can't log in. I'm watching.
Oh, they might require you to change the password.
No.
No, that's, so it's not letting you log
I
in.
can't log in. It keeps telling me it's the incorrect password and it's definitely not.
I wonder if it's not hooked.
That's what I'm wondering. There we go. Finally. Okay, sorry, that was just my.
Well, it might have been that, or it could have taken a while to connect. You know, if it had been off, it might have taken a while to actually connect it and get registered.
We had to include a thing this past Friday, so we put everything with the opportunity access and stuff. Then we shut it down.
Oh, okay. So, anyone else having any issues getting in? All right, so let's talk about what a stored procedure is. Does anybody have a good idea of what they are?
A procedure to store someplace called a form.
You do? That's actually a pretty good definition.
A script.
It is kind of like a script, right? It's basically you're putting together several SQL commands. The advantage of a stored procedure is, as Eli said, it can be executed as a whole and it can be called at any time. After stored procedures, we'll do triggers, and that's sort of, those are things that are called on an event, usually like an insert, update, or delete. Stored procedures are basically just there and they're executed. Another advantage of stored procedures is that you can have several different things happen in them and they're treated as a single thread. So it's actually more efficient. They're executed together. Not all, most database systems allow stored procedures. MySQL did not until, I forget which version it is. I don't know what version it's on now.
It does now, though?
It does now. If you use the ISAM file system, it has two file systems. It's a DB, it's DB INOB is the one that does it. The ISAM is the old one. MySQL was not a relational database technically until they did the INODB because it didn't enforce relationship rules. It does if you use the INODB thing, but the disadvantage for some people is that it's slower because it has to go check referential integrity rules, whereas the first one never checked. So anyway, a stored procedure, a script is actually a pretty good description of it. So I'm going to make a really simple one. We're going to kind of build towards complexity. The first one I'm going to do is just kind of like I'm going to call it like a parameterized view. No, I can't spell parameter today. Meter. So basically, this is just going to be like a view, except you can pass in a variable. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to say create a procedure, and you can say procedure or proc. So if you'd like to be brief, you can do that, or if you want to spell it out, they're identical. They're the same command. Create procedure or create proc. I'm going to give it name, and I tend to call these USP for user stored procedure, and I will just say I think I'm just going to pass in a city. I have no idea what to name it. Okay. One thing I'm going to do real quickly before we go too much farther is I want to show you where the stored procedures live. So I'm going to do community assist. And under programmability, we've looked a little bit at functions because we made those, and you'll see that there's stored procedures. And there are a couple that I built here before. There's an add request, a login, and a register. I built those for other classes, actually, but we could look at those if you want. There's also, if you look at system stored procedures, there are literally hundreds of them. These are ones that have been already written for you. Most of them start with sys, right? Sys procedures. Add log shipping, add app role, add article, add data type. I mean, for a lot of the actions that you can do, there are already stored procedures written. They are not specific to the database. They're more specific to database tasks. Typically, when you use the graphical interface, it runs stored procedures underneath. Those in the summer classes, there's some tools that let you see what's happening, and you can see the stored procedures running underneath. Everything that happens in SQL Server or in any relational database happens as SQL. Does that make sense? The interface runs when you click a button, when you choose a menu, it runs as usually a stored procedure underneath. So this is the beginning of that. I'm going to put in a parameter. I'm going to say @city, and I need to give it a type. This is just like we did with the functions, right? This is something that the user is going to have to provide. And then I'm going to do as, right? So, and then basically after the as will be the SQL. So we're going to do this, and then there actually is a register one here, but we're going to recreate it just to show you step by step how to do that. Now, the reason why it's underlined is it wants a go between it and use community assist. For this one, I'm just going to do select person last name, and I'll alias it as last. Person first name. And I'll alias it as first. I'm putting these because first and last are actually keywords. Person, what else do we want? I'm not going to do a lot because this is just going to be for an example. So I'll just say this is email. And then I'll put the city, person address city. And we'll do it as city. And then I'm just going to say from person, inner join person address. On p.person key equals pa.person key. Come on. Why is it not giving me pa.person key? Where person address city equals @city. All right, so this, as I said, is just like a view, except in a view you can't pass in a parameter. We need to do a select. So we're going to pass in a city, and it's just going to bring back the person, first name, last name, email, and city, and for whatever city we type in. I'll show you how that works in a second. Can you see that? I think that's one of the, let me see if I can, it looks smaller than usual, is it?
They did some tinkering.
Um,
I think it was.
will it work? I think actually if I do. Can you see it now?
Scroll up a little bit though.
Okay. I'm gonna run it in a minute, but I'll let you see it here. Yeah. Oh, I remember. You have it all? If you want, yeah. That'll make it easy. Everybody got it?
I'm just trying to tell me that I have invalid column names. I've worked enough in that database to know.
First and last name, that's good. First name, email, from person to person, that looks good. If you tried to run it, it said it completed successfully.
Execute. No.
What does it give as an
Something as line number one. City prop.
That looks good. Procedure, yes, line to incorrect syntax near city. At city. Oh, you have two cities here.
I wanted it to be extra clear.
Okay, something's wrong there. Oh, person, address, city is one word. That's why you have two cities. And then city as the alias. See how it's all one word, and then you had the city there, which that's why you had two cities.
Although I had to double check. I'm like, is that really how we spell city?
There are days when everything looks weird. All right, so I'm going to run that. Okay, so kind of like with the view and with the function, all it does is tell you that it was completed successfully. That means that it ran, right? That's all it really means. So to execute this, you can use exec or execute. They're the same. It's kind of like with proc and procedure. Exec or execute. And then we say the function's, the procedure's name, which is USP city proc. And USP is just a naming convention. It just means user stored procedure as opposed to a system stored procedure. And then we have to provide the the parameter. So I'm just going to say Kent. So I'm pretty sure there are Kents who've done that before. And if I run that, it brings back all the people in Kent from the list. So it does exactly the same thing that table valued function does. It's just a real simple stored procedure. If you don't know, we'll do some in the next one we're going to do is going to be a lot more complicated. But I wanted to show the basic structure. Still updating?
I'm gonna have to probably reload my first machine. I can't get it to function anymore. It's so slow.
You can do that. You can do it in another machine.
Yeah.
I wonder why it's So your PC is updated.
Well, this is the PC I've been using.
Oh, okay.
I'm
And that's because you never logged in.
Exactly.
And that one, it's there, but it's too slow.
When it doesn't quit, it's too slow.
Okay. Shouldn't be a problem. You have a question? Uh, So, actually, we spoke with that. And then gotcha. And then, check the images. Sleep on there. And order the images. Actually, you have a 26 of this.
I thought in the last one.
But this one is,
Okay, cool.
so go out with it.
Oh, sorry.
And then hold it. It's smaller than the other one. That's what we.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
However, just be warned, it'll probably go through all that updating stuff again. All right, are we okay with this one? I will, of course, post these. And I hope it performs better for you. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How much RAM is on that one?
On this one?
Yeah, for the video, for the virtual.
I'm not sure.
They're all 8, I think.
I think I was gonna say, I think it was 8.
Should be enough. All right. So let's do a more complicated one. And I'm going to do it in 3 stages. And I think just for this, I'm going to do it 3 different times, just copy it and add things to it so that you have a historical record of it. I don't want you to think that you have to do 3 of them with different forms, though. Does that make sense? So I'm going to do 3 different stages. And what the stored procedure is going to do is to register a new user. Now, there's already a stored procedure there, which you can use as sort of a reference, but we're going to do it again from scratch. What do you need to do if you're going to register a new user? What are the things that have to happen in this database? Anybody have an idea?
Insert.
You're going to have to insert, so you're going to have to do a few inserts. Insert into person, right?
Yes.
So that's the first thing you have to do. But then you also have to insert into person address. And you have to insert into contacts. When you insert into person, I'll just do it here. You need to hash the password. Okay. So those are kind of what has to go on in this. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is particularly as things get more complex, I would always suggest that you give yourself a little bit of a script of what you need to do, right? Keep the steps. What are the steps that I have to do? Particularly in SQL stored procedures, they can get really confusing. Because as I said, I actually prefer, I think C# is a lot easier to read than SQL when you start doing complicated things. So those are the things that we need to do. Now, one of the things when we do the, I'm just going to show you when we do the hash the password. There's already some built-in, some functions that I've pre-built, which is get seed and hash password. I'll show you those. We'll just use those. So I'm going to right-click on get hash password. I'm going to script function as create to new window. Okay, so that's what this function looks like. Let me kind of make it big. We're not going to have to write it. We're just going to use it. Why does Control plus not work? Oh, I know it. Control mouse. Okay. So this is the actual function. And again, I just want you to know that it exists because we'll be using it. This is, it's called fx hash password. It takes a seed, which is just a random number. Right, so my get seed just produces a random number. And it takes their password, their plain text password. It returns var binary 500, which is just what the hash takes. How do I know that? I looked it up. So we begin, I declare a variable. This is the password to hash. So this is, so I'm setting to hash, and this is just an inVarchar. And I'm getting the password plus I'm casting the seed to inVarchar. So I'm basically concatenating. What I'm doing here is that you want to take the password and you want to join it with something that's non-verbal. It could be a number, it could be a GUID, it could be something. You just don't want to, by doing that, by combining the two, you're making it so that a dictionary attack won't work. You can't go through and just hash everything in your dictionary and see if it matches. Right? Because it'll never match because of you're joined it with a random number or a random element, whatever. So then I hash all of this, and then there's a hash bytes is a built-in function. It's a SQL Server function. We're using SH2 512, which is one of the more current hashes. And we're going to pass in the string that we're going to hash. And it produces that big, long hexadecimal string.
It's supposed to be 512 bits, right?
Yeah.
Isn't there also like a SHA-256?
Yeah, there's lots of them. I think most of them up to 512 have been cracked.
Oh, really? I hear they're working on like a SHA-3 right now.
How'd you pull it up? So this is in functions. Community assist, hash password. Right click on it. So if you right click on like hash password, and then there's a thing that says script function as, and I did create to, and then I did new window. And again, this is just reference because we're going to use it. One of the things that I've found through practice, actually, so you can hash this in like C# or some other thing too. You can use the same SH2 512. However, I found that I could never make a match because it's also dependent on the size of the string, right? So in C# it was really hard to make sure that the string size was the same as what it was expecting here. And so making them match, you either had to do them all in C#, are all on the database, right, in order to have the match happen. So to me, it's a lot easier to let the database do the hash, and C# just does the match, and figure it, or whatever language you're using. So that's why I wrote the function here. And again, the seed is not super important, and I think I really didn't do a great job here. Let's see what I got. Yeah, I couldn't get the random to work, although later I did, so I should redo this to get the random. So what I did is I took kind of like the way that C# gets its seed for random. I just went to the nanosecond. I did hour. What did I get? Millisecond. I went to the millisecond. And I just took the time and I just turned it all into an integer. So this is a cheat in some ways. I just basically reading the computer clock and taking the digits down to the millisecond. So a millisecond later, the digits should be different, if that makes sense. Again, it's not important that we do this. It's just to show you what there is a random function. I had trouble making it work, but actually since then I figured out how to make it work, so I should go back and just do it. Although the random function is basically just a series of math operations on a time seed. Right? It uses the millisecond or something as a seed. All right, so those two things are purely for reference because we'll use them. Mostly what we want to do is insert into person, get the hash, insert into person address, and insert into contacts. So the three stages that I'm going to do are basically just the inserts. The second one, I'll do try, catch, and error trapping. And then the very last one, we'll add check to see if the person already exists. So we'll do that in 3 stages, but in the end, it'll be just one thing. Does that make sense? So let's just do the first one. Are you guys ready? How close are you to? It'll probably then you have to get the databases.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm gonna see if I can do it on like the main computer.
Okay. How we can do it on the main computer?
Visual Studio maybe? Doing like no? Okay.
There's no SQL Server on the main computer.
You're more than halfway there.
You could do. What were you using? You were just now using a tool.
Oh,
What was that?
SQL.
Fiddle?
It lets you write the code at least. You won't have the database, but you could at least. There are lots of things online that'll let you write SQL, but they usually, I mean, you wouldn't have the database. So. All right, so let's do, I'm going to create a procedure. There's already a procedure for register, so I'm going to call it USP register Mark II for no good reason. All right. So one of the first things that you have to do here is figure out all the things that need to be passed in, right? What are the things that need to be passed in? I know a quick cheat to do that, but let's do it logically. Think about it. Now, the stored procedure would probably be something that you call from a form, right? If you had a web form and you had all the text boxes, each of those text boxes would be mapped to one of the parameters that we're doing here. So we need, from person, what do we need? Let's go up to person.
Email?
Well, yeah, we will, but we need sort of all of it. Email is one. So we need last name, first name, email, password. Those we actually don't need that. We need a plain password, right? But we'll do, so I'm going to do @ let's just call last name. And we have to give it a type. Okay, and we need, we're going to enter a plain text password. I'm not sure how big that needs to be, but it's probably fine if it's 255. We don't have to enter the date, and we aren't going to enter the seed because we'll get that from a function internally. The date we can just do, date time now.
So we don't need to do comments after this.
No. Oh, yes, you do. My brain is gone.
It's Monday. I get it.
Yeah. So let's do person address, right? That's the next thing we need to do. And if you really want, you could just pull in that. So you don't need the address key, but you need let's do apartment. And I have that as in varchar 255, and I'm going to put null after that. Do you know what that does by any chance or guess?
It says that it can't be null.
You can leave it null. Yeah. So one of the things you can do is you can add, you can make it so that it's not required. Well, so they're not null by default.
Yeah.
Opposite of the way the table is. I'm going to do street, or we could even just call it address, but let's do street. It doesn't matter what you name the parameters, although they should make sense to you. I'm going to do city, and one of the things I'm going to do with city I think I can just do Seattle. It might be, so I don't think I can use default there. I'm going to cheat for a second. I'm trying to remember the default. We're going to ignore this one. I just equal. So what this does is it says that if you don't enter anything into city, it will be Seattle. Does that make sense? If you don't enter anything into that parameter, it will automatically write Seattle. It's a default value. If you write something else, it'll overwrite it. Right, so if I write Kent or Bellevue or something, that will go in, not Seattle. But if I do nothing, then it will be Seattle. I'm actually going to just do this as in-car. Oops, not e-car. In-car 2, and I'll do equal wash. So let's go back up to, so we need the zip, right? And that, for whatever reason, I should just make it smaller. What is, it's usually like 7? Or is it 9? 9 is, it's 7 or 9, right?
Yeah, possibly 10 with the dash.
Let's, all right, let's just make it 10. I'm not going to put a default there. Oh, that needs a comma after Washington. Okay, so that's actually all the address ones. And then we need to look at contact. Although basically we're going to do 2 contact things. We're going to do, that's contact type, I need contact. We're going to put at home in varchar. Did I make it 255? I made everything 255. I'm not sure why I did that. And this is nullable. And we're going to do the same with at work. And we're going to make it nullable also. And then I'm going to do as. So let me kind of bring this down and see if I can get that whole list in there. So these are all things that are going to have to be entered by the user. And again, typically they would come in through a form, right? Rather than just raw entry, but we can do that. So those are all the parameters. So part of the thing is, when you're doing this, part of it is thinking about what is it you need. To register a new person, we need all their information, we need the address information, and we need their phones, basically. You might have even more phones. I'm going to show you some. With the phones, we'll make it so that they can be there or not there. You guys got this? Okay, you need a moment. If you have a red squiggly underline under create proc, it probably needs a go above it. And it's not done yet, obviously. This is just taking in the stuff. So the very first thing I will do is I'm going to get the hash for the password. The thing. So I'm just going to declare some variables. So I'm going to declare at seed int equals DBO fx. What is the name of it? Get seed. Yep, get seed.
Password.
Well, not yet. Get seed. And that's no semicolon. So I'm going to do a var binary. I think I'll do this on another line where I just do set at hashed equals DBO dot fx hash password. And I do at seed at password. So the password that they've entered up above. So that will create their hashed password. That's the part where we're using the function. We're going to get the random number. We're going to declare the hash password and then rehash it by passing it the seed and the password. That's sort of extra, but it's nice to have the hashed password if you're going to use it anywhere else. You need a minute for that. As I said, these are a little bit complicated, and I'm going to do them in 3 stages. So the next thing's just 3 insert statements, maybe 4. All right. And you can, let's do this actually. You can comment in here. And the reason I would suggest doing that, I mean, I would comment things extensively in here because it could get confusing, as I said. Comments help. So the next thing I'm going to do is insert the person. And I'm just going to say insert into, oh, not now. All right, insert into person, and we need their, so person last name, person first name, person email, and we will want, so we want their actual password, so person password. I'm going to just go down here too, and I'm going to do person entry date. And person password seed. And then I'm just going to do values. And basically I'm just going to, so at person last name. Actually, I just did at last name, didn't I? At last name, at first name, at email. Oops. Okay, so at hashed, because it's the hashed email we would want there. Let's see, the entry date, get date, and the person seed will be at seed. I'm going to break the line just so it's all there. So this is an insert into person. So we're going to insert into every field. So we're going to last name, which is what comes in as a parameter. First name comes in as a parameter. Email comes in as a parameter. Hashed is their password once it's been hashed. Get date is the current date and time for their entry date. And then the seed is the seed that we got, the random seed. You have to store that because if you're logging in from outside, it has to take the seed with their plain password, rehash it, and see if the hashes match. Does that make sense? Then we need to insert into person address. Although before I do it, I'm going to declare at person key int, and I'm going to assign it a value. I'm going to say that it equals current ident. Is it current ident? It's ident current. Anybody know what this does?
Doesn't it basically track the last record in person and then start using that key, that next key? Sort of.
Right. Well, it's not the next key. It's the one that has just been created. Get the most recent identity from person. So it does this insert, right? And it generates an auto number for this insert. So what this does is it returns that auto number, the one that has just been created for this person. So by assigning that here, we now have stored their key, right? So we know what the person key is, because it's the person key that ties the person to the address to the contact information. So we need the person key. It's good to do it here because this is all happening in process, so nothing else could be inserted in between. Right? And the ident current only works on if it's using auto numbers. Otherwise, we'd have to go search for it. Well, actually, if we weren't using auto numbers, then we would have entered the key here anyway. So, all right. Next thing is to insert into person address. So I'm going to insert into person address. I'm going to cheat a little here. So I'm going to go up to person, down to person address. Drag in the columns. I will break them up a little bit though. Okay. And the one we don't need is person address key because that will be auto-generated. And then the values will be at apartment, at street, at city, at state, at zip, and at person key. Does that make sense? At this point, we're just doing 3 inserts, basically. The one weird part was getting the hash. So the last part I'm going to insert into contact. This will be a little bit weirder. I'm going to do an if here. And I'm going to say if at home is not null. And I'll do a begin and end. And so if it's, I'm going to do insert into contact. Going to go get the fields. Okay, so I don't need the contact key. You know, I could get rid of that. So the values are going to be at home. Did I say at home number? I just said at home, right? Contact key is type is 1, and the person key will be at person key. So I'm just checking to make sure they actually entered a number. Does that make sense? And I'm going to do exactly the same with the work. I'm going to just say if at work is not null, and then the only difference is this will be 2 and this will be at work. This is a little bit unfair. I should probably declare those somewhere. These are in programming what are called magic numbers. Where did they come from? I just happen to know that 1 is home phone and 2 is work phone, but a better way to do this would be to create a variable somewhere, phone type 1, you know. It would be better to have a variable there, but I'm going to leave it as a number for now. We're actually done with the first version of this. Questions on it?
I'm sure I'll digest it mentally after a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, so it's not super. What we have done, just for the logic of it, we've passed in the parameters, right, that we need. These are all the things we need to register a new person in this database. This will vary with different databases. All right, so then I did a little bit that's odd just in terms of getting the hashed password. That's what the first 3 lines do, basically, is they get the hashed password. Using built-in functions. So one of the things to know about a stored procedure is you can call functions from within the stored procedure. In fact, the functions that you made for the function assignment, I'm going to have you call them in the, because you're going to register a new employee. And to do that, you can get their email with that email function, and you can set their initial pay rate with that pay function. All right, so once I've got the hash, everything else that I do is basically just inserting into the 3 tables. Insert into person, we just do that. We use all the fields that we passed in, you know, in the parameter, everything that goes to person. We also did get date just to get the current date, and we did the password will be the hashed password that we built. And we'll also do the C from the function. We get their person key because we need it down below. So then we insert into person address, right? We just do that insert. That's fairly straightforward. We just match all these. Even if they're nullable, you have to have them there, right? So we can enter a null, but it has to be in the list. Yeah.
What about the things you put a default value in for?
So even though they're a default, they have to be here. It's just that if you don't enter them in the parameter list, it'll go with the default.
But how do you not enter it?
I will show you when we do that. So the other thing is that both of these numbers are nullable, home and work. They're both going to contact. The thing that differentiates them is what type they are. Right, so it's possible you'd enter no phone numbers, but so there's 2 rows, possible 2 rows inserted into here. So let me run this. So it says it completed successfully. All that means is that it doesn't actually mean it'll work. It just means that it's stored, that there were no syntax errors that it detected. If you look under stored procedures, so I'm going to refresh there. We have a register mark 2, which is ours. Right. So let's use this.
Mine didn't work.
What did it say?
Let's see, on line 50, it says all main person address space specified word events second. Well, that's a call, that's what it is.
All right, so I am going to, I'll do a go, and I'm going to do EXEC USP underscore register mark 2. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the parameters. There is a list of all the parameters under here. When you have a whole bunch of them like this, it's kind of nice. You can see them all right there. I'm just going to drag that in. Okay, then I have to, I'll break them all down. So I just drag the folder called parameters in. Notice that it returns an integer. And it does. It returns a 1 if it works and a -1 if it doesn't. All right, so I'm going to do last name equals, and we have to give it a last name. Anybody have a good last name for this? I have no idea if Branson's even a legitimate last name, but we'll do that. Equals Martin. Equals bmartin@gmail.com. All right, so password we have to give. The general rule for this database is I always do their last name and then pass. Don't have to do that, but just to be consistent, because it's the name's only in there as a hash. Apartment, here's how you leave this out. You just don't put it in the list when you're calling it. So I'm going to delete the apartment, so they won't have an apartment. I'm going to do, but you have to take it out of the list if you're going to do that. Cool Street, 1001 North, elsewhere. Else would have an E. All right, city I could leave out if it's in Seattle, so I'll do that just to show that works. State I could leave out. Zip, I need to give it something. Now let's do a home number but not a work number. Or do you want to do both? Let's just do one so that we can see that the ifs worked. 206 555 2314. And then I'll get rid of the work one. Because it's nullable, I'll get rid of that last comma too. Oh, so seems to want the apartment even if I don't put any value into it. Didn't I make apartment nullable?
You did.
So why? Let me look at something. Oh, I know what I did wrong to not have those nullable. I need equal null in order to make those nullable. So I am going to alter my procedure. And run it all again with the equal signs in there. And I'm going to put it back to create for the script for when I post it. But you can alter it, right, by doing that. Now it should be happy, even though I don't have those other things in there. I'm going to run this. Okay, so it says 3 rows affected, which is what we would expect. So I'm going to select star from person. We'll just see if we got the person that we want. So at the very bottom, we have Branson Martin, he's person 130. There's that, there's the hashed password, the date, the random seed. If I do person address. The last person is, that's 130 is the person key, 98 Washington, Seattle, null for the apartment. And if I do contact, the very last one is 130. There's the phone number, the contact type, and contact key. So everything worked. Now, again, if I screwed you up, at the very top, what I did is I added equal signs before the null. Because otherwise it wasn't going to let me not do them. So that worked. The only thing that could be wrong with this, anything that you can see that could go wrong with that? What part do you need to see, Eli?
Just go ahead.
All right, I will post it. And we'll go over it. This could take a while. And one reason I want to introduce it now is I'm going to be gone for a week. That gives you some time to work through them. So, what could go wrong? Anything that you can see that could go wrong?
If you forget to, if you accidentally say like a field can be null when it really should be like password.
Well, there's that. But assuming that you got this part right. So one of the things that could happen, yeah.
I was gonna say, if there's no null or work, there's nothing that we have for the if statement. Unless we do that.
Well, so they have to, so if they're null,
Yeah,
then it doesn't do them, right?
yeah.
Okay. What I'm thinking of, what happens, we were inserting into 3 tables. What happens if one of the inserts fails? All right, so say you get an insert into person, but the address fails, right? Or it just, generally, you want this all to happen or none to happen. Does that make sense? You want the whole registration or no registration? Does that kind of make sense?
Is that what happens?
It can happen. It can happen. What would really be bad, although it's really unlikely to happen because of other things, is that the first one would fail and somehow you get an address that isn't attached to a person. Actually, referential integrity won't allow that to happen, so it would just all crash. More likely, you could get the person and something about the address would fail. I don't know. Well, I actually do know. No, I can't. I'm going to put this in there, but I'm actually not sure if I can think of a good way to make it fail. I've already kind of worked in the things that could make it fail. Like if you entered if you entered a state that was more than 2 characters, actually I don't think that would fail because I made it stupidly 255 characters. What would make this fail? I can't think of anything that would make this fail necessarily. But we'll show you what to do anyway, just to be absolutely sure. Because I want to show you how to do try catches in here. So I'm going to copy this whole thing down to the end of the, don't copy the execute in there. Because if you copy the execute into the stored procedure, you get a loop. So I'm going to do control. So I'm just going to copy it, control C. So this is going to be our second version. With a try catch. And transactions. So I'm going to paste it. And I'm going up the top, I'll change it to alter. I'll do a go just so it undoes that line. Oops, that's. All right, so right here I'm going to do, I think right above the inserts. I'm going to do begin tran. So actually, let's do this above the quote, the comment. So I'll do begin transaction. Okay. So you guys remember tran?
It locks down the database.
Right. And in this context, it's actually okay, because this whole procedure will execute in a nanosecond. So you're not locking the database any longer than a normal transaction would be. But it does give you some control here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do begin try. Actually, I think I know a way to fail this. I was just thinking. So do you guys know from other languages try catch or no? So when you do a try, you're just testing all the code. And if everything goes great, then it just does what it's supposed to do. If there's any error, you'll want it to drop into a catch. So I right up the top, so I'm going to insert person. Actually, again, before I do the insert person, I'm just changing it for the comments. Okay. So we're going to insert the person. We're going to insert the person address. Sorry. We're going to go all the way to the end here, and then I'm going to say commit tran and end try. All right, so if it makes it all the way through those, there's been no error, right? So if it makes it to the commit tran, it's already made it through all the code. You're good, so write it. And then we're done with the try, but what we want to do is begin catch. So I'll comment these this way. So we're ending the try. And I'm going to say roll back tran. And then I will say end catch. Although you can, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to, this only works in the SQL Server environment. It doesn't work outside. It is possible to return an error number, like the number of an error, but this inside of this environment, it will print the error message. So I'll walk through it again real quickly, and then I will there's one other piece to this, and then we'll do an update one too, because I asked you guys to do one with updates. So we're altering it because we're making changes to it. It's not a new stored procedure, it's the same one, just changed. Nothing different up here. But down here we added, after we did the hash stuff, I did a begin transaction. And it's important that you do the begin transaction before the begin try. Anybody have any idea why?
You have to do the transaction before you can test whether or not it actually works.
And it's also a matter of scope. You guys know programming scope. The transaction has, just like other languages, when you declare something or start something that has the scope of the block it's inside of, if it's inside the try, you can't see the transaction in the catch. So it has to be outside the try. So begin the transaction, we begin the try. Then there's no difference in the code until the very end, where I say commit tran, which writes it to the database, because if you get to that point, there's been no errors in try. And it will ignore the catch unless there's been an error. If there's been an error, then it will roll back the transaction. And in our case, it'll print the error message again, just in this environment, and then we'll end the catch. So I think email addresses have to be unique. Let's go, because they're user, I'm going to run this all the way up again to the top. And actually, I'm just going to do the same. What happens if I do the same person? It might throw an error. Not 100% sure. Oh, and I somehow didn't get the exec. So let's see if this throws an error. Yes. So 0 rows affected. Notice it's printing out the error message as I asked it to. Violation of the unique key constraint, unique email, because the emails have to be unique. Cannot insert duplicate key in object DBO person. The duplicate key is, and it gives you the field. Right. So it worked. I made an error in the first one. It rolled it back and it hit the error message. Does that make sense? Now, when you look at this, personally, I find this a lot less readable than C# or something like that.
I've never done anything with C#, so I won't.
Or even Python, or any language. I prefer like curly brace. So you could indent this. You could make it a little more readable if you do the proper indentation and all of that. But it's still pretty ugly. And I'm going to make it a little more ugly, you know, for the last one. I have seen professionally written stored procedures that go on for pages. I actually consider that a really stupid way to do it. You should break it up into sub-procedures and then maybe call this the procedures from procedures if you need to. But to write out a 7 or 8 page stored procedure, they're just a nightmare to try to debug.
Or you can just read.
Or even to read, yes. So I'm going to copy the second version. And then I will do the last version of this one, which would be the final version. Yes. And the only reason I'm doing it this way is I just want you to have a script that shows how we built it, as opposed to, because I could do it all in one. You know, you could just keep going back and changing the one. You guys don't have to write 3 versions. But you might want to do it in steps and stages like this. Get the plain logic first, then do any try catches that you need, and then if you need to do some other things. So the last part So this is the third and final version. So what we'll do is we'll check for, basically we'll check to see if the person exists. So, right after the as, I am going to say if exists. And then I'm going to do, or actually let's do it if not exists. Because I think it'll be more elegant that way. What? Did I spell exist wrong?
It's not okay to be asking this question. I questioned city earlier.
Why is it having a problem with exists? If not exists, probably because I need the query then. Select, yeah, select, we could probably, because emails are unique, we could just do it on the email. But if you want, so let's do select star from person, where email equals, actually where person email equals at email. And just to be safe, we could say and person last name equals at last name, and person first name equals at first name. So, and you could do it for as many fields as you feel like you need to. So you go through and you check, does it exist? And what exists returns is a Boolean, true, false. That's all it does. It just returns true or false. This thing exists or it doesn't exist. So I'm going to say begin. And what this is the begin for the if. And at the very end, after everything, I'm going to do an end. And I'll comment that end if. And I'll just up here. So basically, if the person doesn't exist, we go through everything that we just did. Does that make sense? If the person doesn't exist, then we will do the inserts. All right, so at the very bottom, after we do the end if, we do an else. And then I'm going to do a begin and end for the else. And so this is if person does exist. All I'm going to do there is print and again, this won't work if you were calling this from C# or something. This is only in this environment that the print works. All right. So basically it comes here and it says, so if they don't exist, it does all the stuff we already did. If they do exist, we're just going to come down here, say they already exist, and then exit. But as you can see, that you got so many ends and so many begins, and it can get worse. So let's do this third version. So instead of throwing an error this time, if we do the same thing, it should just say already in database. So that's what it says down here. It's already in database. So it basically at the top, it's detected they already exist, went down to the bottom, said already in database. Does that make sense? I'm going to do one more stored procedure, and then obviously we're taking up your whole class today. This one is because I asked you basically to do two procedures. One of them is kind of like this, but it's less complicated. It's less complicated because in Metro Alt, most of this information is just in the employee table, right? So to adding a new employee, you're mostly just on the employee table. The only thing new you have to add is their position and their pay rate. So you have two tables instead of three, basically. But I also asked you to update. So let's do an update on maybe just an address. So I'm going to just say create a stored procedure to update address information. So I will just do create proc USP, and I think I'm just going to call it update address. And one reason I want to do this is, as I think I mentioned before, when you are doing, if you're a database administrator, one of the things you never want to give people permission to do is to update stuff. But in practice, they do have to be able to. The way you want to do that is through a stored procedure. You can give them permission to do the stored procedure without giving them, permission to actually update. Does that make sense? So they can run the stored procedure, but not have update privileges. The stored procedure will do the updating. So we need some variables. So this is for the address. I'm just going to real quickly go to person address, and I'm going to drag in the columns. And I'm just going to break them down here. They don't have to be in a row like that, just makes them easier to read. I'm going to put an @ in front of each of them, and then I'll give them all a type. I'm a lazy typist, so the less typing I can do, the better. Also, I'm a bad typist, so the most I can do, the better. So most of these are going to be in varchar 255, and I'm just going to put that on all of them except the person key. That's what's in the database. Person key would be int, and then I'm going to do as, and it wants a go. All right. So the way this works, if you're doing it in a form, like if you build a web page, is typically you call up all the information from their site, right, from that person, and it's all written there. All of the text boxes are filled out. It'll have their address, their apartment, their street, their city, their state, their zip, etc. And they just change what they want to change. They change the values they want to change. When you write it back, it writes from all these fields, but most of them are the same as they were before. Does that make sense? I get the sense that doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm typing that stuff out, so.
Okay. I'll give you a second to do that. Although, as I said, dragging it in is always good. But
It just makes sense to me that the first part of it.
well, so this one we're doing an update, right? So these are all the parameters that we need because we're going to update just the address. So an update is when somebody needs to change something that's existing. So this is actually separate from what we did up above. Does that help or no? What would help?
Maybe that'd be the first part of the so I even know what the procedures are.
So store procedure, as I said, is just a store. I can come help you in a minute. I'm doing this one because the assignment has one like this one too. So again, this is just for updating. These are just the parameters that have to go in. What you want to do, and I am going to do a begin tran and a begin try. It's always a good idea with updates. Although we're controlling it and there will have to be a person key, right? So I am going to say update person address set. What did I just do? Set. Actually, we don't want person address key. Sorry. Do we? No, we don't want to be able to change that. So we're going to set person address apartment equals at person address apartment, APT. Is it? Okay, and then we're going to do comma, and basically it'll be person address street. So we're just going to set each of the fields to the variable equals at. Did I spell that wrong? No. And city. So at person address city. And the last one is zip. Where person key equals at person key. And then I'm just going to commit tran. In try. Begin catch. Roll back. Tran. If there is an error. Okay, so that's the whole thing. So we're just going to let them update their address. And basically, we're just going to set all the fields to whatever the parameters have. If there's any errors, we'll go into the catch. But it will always be where the person key equals that person key, so it'll never be done without a error. Does that make sense?
What's after weekend catch?
Rollback catch. The print is just extra, the print error message and end catch. Those are just extras that it's nice to have. I'm going to make this procedure. And then I'll show you how it works. Then I'll give you a few minutes to circulate, and then I will pretty much have an open lab this Wednesday. And then when I get back, we'll do, I guess we actually have triggers. The 3 things to do, 2 of which are really easy. Triggers aren't too hard. Let's see if this works. So first I'm going to do, so I'm going to select start from person address, just because I want to see what's in person address. And let's, so I'm going to go down to the stored procedures. And I'm going to refresh that so it shows person update address. I'm going to do, we'll execute it. So USP update address. I'm just going to drag the parameters in, and I'll break them down. And give them some values. For the most part, let's say that the person has moved, but it's still in Seattle, Washington. Should we do just number 1?
Yes.
So I'm just going to do the apartment is equal to 10A. The street, I don't know, where have they moved to? 101, 1001. They were at north, let's do, or south, let's do north. They just moved down the street. City, I'm just going to say equals Seattle. And again, in a form, this would be populated from the database. So you just, anything that you didn't need to change would just be there. The zip, since it's on the same street, we'll leave it as 98001. And that needs to be quoted too. And the person key equals 1. So when I execute that, it says 1 row affected. And when I go back, they now are at 10A north. Okay. So let me.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I'm lazy and doing the update, there's some certain fields not changed. Do I just skip them, or do I have to?
You actually can't skip them here, but you could if it was like in a web form or something. Because as I said, what usually the way it happens in a web form is if when you go to an update page, they select your values, and the values are already populating the fields. So you only change the ones that you need to, and then but it will write back everything. Does that make sense? So if you don't change the city, it'll just take the city that they had put in the thing in the first place. If you don't change the state, it'll just take that. So you only have to change the information that you need changed. But in this format, you have to put values, all the values in. I could, except we don't have Visual Studio on here. I could show you how to do the web forms. But
You mean on the VM?
yeah.
We have them all like these.
Yeah, but I can't get it from it to the VM. Yeah.
Web forms, wouldn't that be .NET? space.
Yes, but you could do it in PHP. I mean, you could do it in probably. I've never used Node. You could use it in. You could do it in Java. You could do it in any language, actually. All right, so I'm done with that. Let me stop the video, and then I'll come around and help for a minute, and then I'll post this. Or do you want me to post it first? Post it first? Okay.
I was running the traffic, so.
So, was I posting these in? I think I was posting it in here. So I'm going to